Now it's time for Lefties Losing It, and we've been showcasing spectacularly unfunny comedians broken by their hatred of Donald Trump and incapable of producing anything approaching comedy. And I've got another one for you, sad Brit John Oliver. Though in his defence, he details here precisely why Donald Trump won and why his supporters are ecstatic.
In just the past 4 weeks, he's pardoned or commuted the sentences of January 6th rioters, withdrew the US from both the Paris Accords and the WHO, announced plans to take over Gaza, issued an executive order trying to undo birthright citizenship, blamed the fatal DC plane crash on DEI, renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, responded to fires in LA County by releasing billions of gallons of water to California's Central Valley 150 miles away, replaced a 4-star general with the host of Fox and Friends as Secretary of Defense, and announced 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico.
You know what? Donald Trump should use that in his next ad campaign. Promises made, promises kept. Thanks for the update, John Oliver. Now to possibly the dumbest woman in America. And yes, I know that is a big claim, but if you've ever been unfortunate enough to read any of Jen Rubin's crazy emoting masquerading as analysis, you'd understand why I feel very confident in making that claim. This is a woman who said that Republicans who weren't even in power were responsible for Hamas attacking on October 7. Incredible. And she claimed that Republicans want to kill your children.
How about this? Republicans want to kill your kids. It's actually true.
Yep, it's a fact. She's madder than a cut snake, and I can bring you about 1,000 other examples of how irredeemably thick this woman is. But let's look at the latest example where she claims that those who support Donald Trump, that would be the majority of voters, Jennifer, she claims they don't read.
Why would ABC, Disney, the mouse, who has more money than God, settle with Donald Trump?
I honestly don't know.
You know, I've asked, why would ABC? But people ask me all the time, why is the media so mamsy-pamsy? And there are two explanations. One is they are convinced that if they would just move a little bit to the right, all those MAGA readers out there, now you'll notice the contradiction in terms, MAGA readers, would pick up the Washington Post and they would have more readers. What is the logical fallacy here? Yes, reader.
The audacity of that dimwit is astonishing. And sticking to those with a room temperature IQ, let's check in with this hysterical clown, a trans woman, we are told, well, so a man, who believes concentration camps are just around the corner.
With concentration camps looming in the United States, here's what queer people are doing. Yes, I said concentration camps, you can MAGA. We are getting a go bag ready. We're going to have a go bag with shoes, clothes for 7 days, dehydrated food, think astronaut food for 7 days. We're going to have $1,000 cash or prepaid credit card on hand. And this is just for the emergency. This isn't for permanency. This is for a week of getting by off the grid. We're going to have anything ready for the pets that we're taking with us. So put some cat litter in your trunk.
Don't forget the cat litter, that's very important. You know what, that is so wacky that I almost suspect he's trolling us, but I'm told it's real. And really, with the craziness of the modern left these days, it's becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish between satire and lefties losing it, like this dude who wants to kick gay white Zionist men out of the LGBT community.
I'm finally starting to realize that white, gay Zionists should be demoted from being gay. Like, it's not okay for someone to be so open and accepting of queer culture or be part of the LGBTQ community when you are supporting genocide. These type of gays, let me tell you, they are the worst. They are the worst because they are basically becoming their oppressors.
So if you're a white gay man who believes Israel has a right to exist, then you're backing your oppressors. Does that nincompoop realise that Israel is the only country in the Middle East where gay men enjoy real rights, freedoms, protections? I wouldn't go announcing your gayness or your membership of the LGBTQ community in places like Gaza, lest you be thrown off the roof of any building that's still standing. But this is not isolated. This suicidally stupid impulse of lefties to back regimes that would have them killed. Have a look at this lot.
Between these two choices, who would you say is more likely to be supportive of the LGBTQ community?
Oh, this dude.
Okay, why would you say that?
Because he's a brown person and he's not for Trump.
Do you think the fact that he's part of Hamas would stop him from supporting that community?
Not at all.
Probably number one.
Number one?
Palestinians.
Why would you say that?
Because Trump supporters are typically anti-LGBT.
Number one? Okay, what makes you say that?
They just look kinder.
Kinder. Do you think that, somebody that's, say, a member of Hamas would be supportive of the gay community? Yeah.
It's almost impossible to adequately describe how ill-informed these kids are, and their vote counts just as much as yours does. Scary, isn't it? Now, sticking with craziness, let's check in with the Cathedral of Hope Church in Dallas. Yeah, this is a church in Texas which had a drag queen, dude in a wig and a dress, joking about killing those who voted for Donald Trump.
Any of y'all voted for Trump? Please don't tell us. No, don't tell us. Or do, and do y'all sacrifice? Do y'all do that? Did we start? He voted for Trump?
No, I said the church is safe.
Okay, because I will kill him.
Yes, that's a drag fundraiser at a church in Dallas, Texas. And that's the same church that had this depravity, including some degenerate in a leather dog mask on all fours.
I'm going to invite our guests, our family, to come and join me for a moment, especially the members of the Lone Star Royal Court, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and members of the Bears. If you are with us this morning, would you just come and join me up the front? I'm going to ask our clergy to come down to the front.
And thanks to Sarah Gonzalez for bringing us those clips. Now, we need some light relief, and here is an actually funny comedian. This is Jerry Seinfeld. And watch how he gracefully dismisses some loser who asks for a selfie, pretending to be a fan, before getting political about Palestine.
Jerry, can I get a selfie?
Sure.
Free Palestine!
Maybe? I don't care about Palestine.
Joining me now is filmmaker and journalist Ami Horowitz. Ami, let's start with US efforts to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. And it's clear Trump is pulling out all stops to encourage, some would say bully, President Zelensky to agree to a deal. He's launched an attack on the Ukrainian leader, calling him a dictator without elections and saying he's done a terrible job. And Ami, this has shocked the world, but it shouldn't have shocked them, because if they were paying attention during the election campaign, it was clear that Donald Trump wants an end to this war and he wants to stop sending billions to Ukraine.
Yeah, okay, look, first of all, let me start by saying, I've said it on this program, I've said it publicly in other places, I've been a firm and solid supporter of the war against Russia by Ukraine. And for a variety of reasons, real quick. The fact we've had this war, and this is from a realpolitik perspective, right? What this war has done, it has degraded and, in fact, almost destroyed the Russian military, almost destroyed the Russian economy. It has taken essentially one of our biggest geopolitical foes off the board for almost a generation. What it's also done, it has made a very clear and important message to China, which says, look, if we're willing to go to the mattresses for Ukraine, which is not as important to us as Taiwan, imagine what we're going to do for Taiwan. I think China understands that. And I think even more importantly, it has allowed NATO to understand the importance of self-reliance and the importance of self-defense. I think that's a vital part of this equation. Look, what he said was outrageous, but I am done condemning Trump for his crazy statements. I've done it before and I've been burned, okay? He did that with NATO. He said unhinged things. We're going to leave NATO. Well, guess what happened? They called him crazy. They called him insane. Well, before he made that statement, the vast majority of NATO countries were not paying their 2% of defense spending. after he made those statements, now the vast majority of those 31 countries are in fact paying their 2%, okay? He said, we're going to invade Greenland, right? Crazy man. What is this guy saying? Well, guess what? His point was, hey, Denmark, you're not doing your job with Greenland. Greenland is an important strategic point, chokehold in our in the Western Hemisphere, and you are not doing your job with time and money defending and making sure that Chinese and Russian ships and submarines are not crossing with impunity. Well, guess what? They are now. Denmark now is spending more money and time in Greenland. So look, I'm done condemning Trump for crazy things. What I think is happening here, I think he's playing the heel, right? I think he's trying to bring Putin to the negotiating table. Putin has a fear of Trump. Like, let's be honest. Why does he have a fear of Trump? Because actually Trump's record the first time around was supporting Ukraine. Before Trump, what did the U.S. give under Barack Obama? They gave them blankets. What did Trump do? He gave them weapons. So he's trying to say to Putin, look, I'm on your side. You can trust me. I'm down with you. And I think that's ultimately what is needed to end up brokering a peace deal. So let's see what happens before we go crazy.
And what's that line from The Art of War? You build your enemy a golden bridge to retreat on, something like that. And I think that's part of this entire strategy. But I'm glad you've learned, because many other analysts clearly haven't learned, about waiting and seeing what the impact of Trump's rhetoric and actions actually are. And in this case, some of that is already apparent. It's been immediate. We've seen a number of European countries being motivated to do more. This is what Donald Trump wants. Within hours of Trump's comments about Zelensky, European countries rallied to Ukraine's support, promising increased defence and security spending within days, Army. This is precisely what Donald Trump wants to see.
I think people, particularly the Europeans, they don't, he's reactionary. We don't know what he's going to do. But it's that rhetoric that he does which pushes them in the direction he wants them to go. It's all a negotiating tactic. It's all about the art of the deal. Yeah, I'm here for it.
And Americans have made it clear they don't want to see these forever wars, 10 years, 20 years. They don't even want to be involved financially in these wars. Now, contrast that to how President Biden made executive decisions that some of them he wasn't even aware of, according to Speaker Mike Johnson. Have a listen to this story.
Real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing.
Will we ever know who was making those decisions during those 4 years? And again, you talk about rhetoric versus reality, and despite what Donald Trump has said, even during his first term, he was in Europe warning the Germans about becoming reliant on Russian energy, telling them that this was going to cause them issues down the track, and they laughed at him, Army. The contrast between the two leaders could not be greater.
Rita, can't we just let Biden go into the long good night? Do we really have to go over all this? Oh, the poor... Look.
Yes. I want to know who was making the decisions. I want to know who was ruling the world, who was in the chair as the leader of the free world, because it appears it wasn't Joe Biden.
I want this story to be apocryphal, okay? Because it is if this is true, and I have no reason to doubt Speaker Johnson, it is one of the worst things I have ever heard. The man didn't know that he was pausing natural gas shipments out of the U.S. I mean, that's crazy town if that's true. Look, this is exactly why they. Okay, you want to know who was in charge? It was Dr. Jill Biden, right? The greatest doctor since Dr. Pepper and Dr. J. And it was a cadre of unelected officials that were primarily from the Obama administration who were running the show. Of course it wasn't Joe Biden. When you're talking about rhetoric versus reality, Biden wasn't living in reality. Are you kidding me? He didn't know what reality was. Frankly, Rita, that's the charitable version of this. The uncharitable version is that, look, he knew exactly what he was saying and exactly what he was doing, and he sees that our energy independence as an evil because he is in the pocket of the Green New Deal people, and he simply wanted to make sure we had no ability to have energy independence ourselves and no way to make money on this stuff, even though the one thing you want to do is you want to decrease, again, going back to Ukraine, decrease European dependence on Russian natural gas, the only lifeline Russia has. And how do you cut that? It's by increasing and selling our natural gas to Europe. Look, the whole thing is crazy. Any way you look at it, it's terrible, it's sad. Gee, let's move on.
Let's move on. Let's talk about the UK. Our great friend Douglas Murray has written a fantastic piece about a poll that was released this week showing that only 41% of young British people, that's young people aged 18 to 27, felt proud to be British, just 41%. And you contrast that to just 21 years ago, back in 2004, the figure was 80% Army. And I would think this is not confined to the UK. This is a phenomenon we're seeing in the Western world. And I would argue it's a dangerous phenomenon.
Oh, it's not just a dangerous phenomenon. It's the death of Western culture and Western supremacy if that trend continues. It's incredibly dangerous. It's incredibly awful. And look, Michelle Holbach wrote this phenomenal book called Submission. And I recommend everyone read it. It's about how it was a novel about how Islam took over France. And a large part of that was because there was a lack of French nationalism and the degradation of French nationalism. If you'll indulge me with two personal stories, I think exemplifies this, if you don't mind, Rita. Friends of mine visited from England a couple of years ago, and their young daughter remarked to us and to their parents, she's like, I don't understand why there's so many American flags out. She was flabbergasted by it because the Union Jack is flown nowhere in England. And then another story that I've told before, but it bears repeating, is that here in the U.S., you know, my coffee shop that I go to, like most coffee shops, quite left-leaning. And during Gay Pride Month, they have the Gay Pride flag up. And during Black History Month, and I'm sorry, during Juneteenth, they have the Juneteenth flag up. You know what flag they don't have up during the 4th of July? The American flag, right? This is a problem we have with the left. The left wants to destroy patriotism because when you destroy patriotism, that's how you are able to remake society in their own warped image. That's the goal. You know, during the Spanish Civil War, Franco remarked, there are 4 nationalist columns approaching Madrid, and there's a 5th column in Madrid looking to attack from within. That is what the left is. The hard left is a 5th column inside the United States and inside Western Europe because they see patriotism as a wall against them, buttressing American society and Western society, and they don't like that. They don't want that. The good news is that Trump, he really made massive strides with young people in this country. We're hoping that Gen Z is actually flipping the script and will actually move more toward the Republican column and more toward patriotism. And by the way, there's a fascinating article recently in The Atlantic about the youth and said COVID is one of the major reasons why the youth has moved to the right, because they saw their freedoms being taken away and they didn't like it. So I'm hoping there's hope. Rita, we'll see.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, because we see it right here in Australia, a country where every citizen should be proud, but so many youngsters have got that anti-West sentiment. Before you go, just want to quickly ask you about this latest executive order we've seen from Donald Trump. He's probably signed more since this one. Yesterday, he signed an order to expand access to IVF and other fertility treatments through the reduction of out-of-pocket costs. I'm sure we were told repeatedly throughout the election campaign that Republicans wanted to ban IVF altogether. Obviously, that's not the case.
No, it's exactly this is the Trump derangement syndrome exemplified, right? Where everybody was out there saying that Trump is against IVF. He's going to take away the ability to have children. The exact opposite. He telegraphed this. He said he was supportive of IVF. He wanted to do this. It's exactly what he did. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people on the right who are actually condemning this. I think this is extremely pro-life, pro-family. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. And this is how we lose elections. We got to be careful.
Horowitz, thank you so much for your time tonight.